I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Very good afternoon and welcome to the Briefing PM, an hour of the latest political news, debate and analysis here on GB News. I'm Darren McCaffrey and here's what's coming up over the next hour between now and 4 PM. Well, of course, we've had PMQs today. The Prime Minister under pressure on the opposition's perceived inaction on the cost of living crisis. We'll get reaction from Michael Fabricant, among others. Should the government be doing more? Liz Truss has hit out to the culture in Parliament after a Conservative MP arrested for rape. We'll be discussing the cultural changes which need to change and be enforced at Westminster. And there is a split in the Tory party on windfall tax, with the Scottish Conservatives saying there's no way they'll back it. We'll be finding out why. Plus, we've got an interview with Conor Burns as well. As always, do get in touch. You know the email address by now, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at gbnews. All that between now and 4 o'clock. But first, at the top of the hour, here's the news with Rosie.
A very good afternoon. It's just 2 minutes past 3. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date. Labour has repeated its call for a windfall tax on energy companies to help with the rising cost of living on the day the inflation rate hit a 40-year high. The Consumer Price Index hit 9% in the 12 months to April. That's up from 7% in March. While speaking at Prime Minister's Questions, Boris Johnson promised to look at all measures available to help struggling families. But Sir Keir Starmer accused the government of inaction.
Whilst he dithers, British households are slapped with an extra £53 million on their energy bills every single day. Meanwhile, every single day, North Sea oil and gas giants rake in £32 million in unexpected profit.
We're already spending £22 billion. We're already helping people with the cost of living in any way that we can, Mr. Speaker. But the reason we can do that is because we took the tough decisions to get this country through COVID, to make sure that we came out of lockdown in the way that was necessary, and to have a strong economy.
Meanwhile, official figures show food prices are also going up across the UK, with those rising steepest including meat, oils and fresh milk. According to the Retail Price Index figures, overall food prices rose by nearly 7%. Lamb and poultry have been up by 14% and 10% respectively. Some food producers like Premier Foods, who own brands like Mr Kipling and Oxo, have warned their already increased prices will have to go up further. Boris Johnson says he was shocked to learn that a Conservative MP had been arrested after being accused of rape and sexual assault offences. The accused politician, who can't be named for legal reasons, has been released on bail pending further investigations and has been asked by the Chief Whip to stay away from Parliament. But the Labour Party has called for the politician to have the whip removed. The Foreign Secretary says it would be very positive if the UK and the EU could negotiate a solution to the Northern Ireland Protocol, but there must not be a delay. Liz Truss has set up plans to rewrite Britain's post-Brexit trading agreement, changing the rules on how goods enter Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK. The Democratic Unionist Party is currently refusing to join the executive instalment until a solution is found. An NHS trust has been fined more than £1.3 million after failing to provide self-care to a pensioner and a dialysis patient. A senior district judge said that families of the deceased had suffered unimaginable grief after the patients died whilst at Royal Shrewsbury Hospital in 2019 and 2020. The judges said the offences were aggravated by a previous fine and a poor management health and safety record. A 13-year-old boy has been arrested on suspicion of sharing Islamist terrorist material online. The teenager was detained in West London yesterday, but he's since been released on bail until mid-June. Investigators say it's very rare for teenagers to be arrested for terrorism offences, but recently there has been a slight increase. More than 260 small boats have crossed the English Channel into UK waters so far this year. GB News has confirmed the figures. 7 small boats were spotted on the English side of the Channel yesterday. 285 people were transferred onto border force and rescue vessels. It's more now this year than double the number who crossed at the same time last year. Celebrations in Seville. Streets are closed, barriers are set up. Officers are on high alert as more than 100,000 Scottish football fans arrive in the Spanish city. Rangers supporters have already been seen partying outside the stadium as they look forward to the Europa League final. The last and only time the Scottish club has ever won a European trophy was half a century ago. They kick off tonight against Eintracht Frankfurt at 7 p.m. This is GB News. I'll keep you up to date as we get it. Now let's head to the briefing with Darren.
A very good afternoon. It is 6 minutes past 3 o'clock on this Wednesday afternoon. You're watching the briefing here on GB News. We're online on TV and, of course, on your wireless radio as well. Thank you very much indeed for your company. We'll start today with PMQs, dominated by, of course, the cost of living crisis. Keir Starmer quizzed the Prime Minister on what the government needed to do to help people across the country and, of course, calling for that windfall tax on big energy companies. Let's have a look at the exchanges between the two.
Mr. Speaker, a one-off tax on huge oil and tax profits would raise billions of pounds, cutting energy bills across the country. The Chancellor rightly says there are two camps on this. You're either for it or you're against it. But which camp does the Chancellor put himself in? He says, neither. Well, I'm in favour of it. The question for the Prime Minister is he for it? Is he against it? Or is he sitting on the fence like his Chancellor?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think I just remind the House that the right honourable gentleman struggled to define what a woman was. When he he couldn't make up his mind on that point, Mr. Speaker. Heaven help us. This government is not in principle in favour of higher taxation. Of course not. But what we want to do. Well, we don't want to put. Of course, they love it. They love it, Mr. Speaker. They love putting up taxes. All this was dog spot, Labour meow. Labour puts up catch me out. Labour put up taxes. What we want to do is take a sensible approach, governed by the impact on investment and jobs, Mr. Speaker. And that is the test of a strong economy. And it's by having a strong economy that we'll be able to look after people as we have done during COVID and as we will do in the aftershocks of COVID.
Well, the backdrop to that exchange at PMQs, of course, is rising prices. They're rising at their fastest rate for 40 years as our energy bills hit millions of households. UK inflation, the rate at which prices are rising, jumped to 9% in the 12 months to April. That's up from 7% in March. The surge came as millions of people saw an unprecedented £700 a year rise in energy costs last month. Power, fuel and food prices, driven by the Ukraine war, are also pushing up the cost of living, with inflation expected to reach 10% in the coming months. Well, joining me now in the studio is the head of investment at Interactive Investor. That's Victoria Scholar. Victoria, very good afternoon to you. Thank you for joining us. There's a bit of a disagreement, isn't there, about what's driving this inflation, or I suppose how much is coming from where, isn't there? People saying it's COVID, people saying it's the war in Ukraine, others suggesting, though, it's the monetary policy we've had and maybe the inaction of the Bank of England.
Yeah, well, I mean, inflation was already on the rise before the war in Ukraine. Clearly, that has exacerbated the rise in price levels. But a lot of this has been about the time post-COVID. So we've seen supercharged demand coupled with problems with the global supply chain, and that's led to huge imbalances. And that imbalance between demand and supply has pushed prices higher. But like you say, we've been seeing financial markets, for example, essentially in a big uptrend since all the way back in 2008. And that's been predicated on cheap money from central banks that have been propping up asset prices around the world.
What do we do about this? Because, you know, the government obviously are getting an awful lot of stick for not doing enough. But isn't the fear if the government does too much that it could make things worse?
Yeah, I mean, I think the focus is really on the Bank of England in terms of what to do here. Typically, interest rates are the key tool to combat inflation. As interest rates move higher, that tends to take some of the heat out of the economy and dampen demand, and that helps to level out price levels. There has been a lot of discussion about what the government can do, whether that's through a windfall tax to help the cost of living crisis, whether that's cutting national insurance or even a cut to income tax. But you have to remember that these policies are actually inflationary themselves because it's a fiscal injection and that tends to boost demand. So while it might in the short term help with the cost of living crisis, that broader instability in terms of price levels might actually exacerbate some of those woes.
Isn't the truth, if the sole aim was to bring down inflation, not only would you rise or raise interest rates, you'd probably do the same with taxation as well?
Yeah, but I think the difficult thing is that interest rates are a tool that tends to focus on demand. So what it does is by putting interest rates up, it means it will bring down demand for mortgages. It helps businesses' loans become more expensive, so it might soften demand. But a lot of the inflation that we're seeing is actually coming from the supply side. So it's coming from problems with the global supply chain. It's coming from the war in Ukraine. So the Bank of England is in a very unenviable position of trying to target supply-side inflation with demand-side tools.
Do you think, in many regards, the government, commentators, everyone else should be a bit more honest and frank about the fact that if you want to bring inflation under control, it frankly does mean economic pain?
And I think they have. The Bank of England has signalled that we are potentially heading into a recession, and we've already seen that come through in the economic data. In Q1 GDP, we saw a contraction for the month of March. Also, when we look at some of the other gauges, like consumer confidence figures or retail sales, we're starting to see that all soften. So I think it is pretty clear from the Bank of England and the government that we are looking towards either a soft or hard landing, economically speaking, before hopefully we get a pickup at some point next year.
And just very finally, what do you make about this idea of a windfall tax? I mean, it's been done in the past to banks and other places. There is an argument, isn't there? And, Labour Party have been making this quite strongly. Some within the Conservative Party have been making this quite strongly, that effectively you have this one-off tax that you then target at those who've been hit hardest.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one because on the one hand, the reason why some of these oil giants like BP and Shell have been doing so well is because of the war in Ukraine. It's not because of necessarily their business fundamentals that have been meaning that they've been doing really well. But at the same time, the other argument goes, well, they were loss-making back in 2020 when oil prices went negative. There wasn't any financial support for them then. But clearly, something needs to be done about the cost of living crisis.
It does, but there is also a kind of discussion about investment, isn't there? That seems to be the main argument against it, that energy companies won't invest if you hyphen off these profits. But then the alternative view is, well, these are profits they didn't expect to make. So actually the investment money had already been put aside. Is that fair?
I mean, it's a really difficult one to say. I think that a lot of these oil companies actually did think that they were going to be faced with a windfall tax and weren't necessarily even against it themselves. They haven't come out saying, we desperately don't want this. So I think it is a really interesting policy that needs to be considered.
And just very, very finally, on this idea of a recession, I mean, what's your thought? Is it almost inevitable now, given where we're at, given that inflation's looking at, 10% by the end of the year?
I think it almost is inevitable, and it's just a technicality as to whether we see what the definition of a recession is, which is 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth. We could possibly just about avoid it by seeing 0% growth or 0.1% growth in one of those quarters. But it's clear that the next 2 quarters are going to be very, very challenging economically.
Yeah, because March, if that month alone, we saw
that
negative growth, didn't we?
Exactly. We saw that surprise shock to the downside in March. If that were to extend into the second and third quarter, then we'd be in a technical recession. I
do love the term, by the way, negative growth. I'm not entirely sure how that works, but I quite like it.
Economists love it.
Indeed. Claire, thank you very much indeed. Claire Scholar there joining us in the studio. Thank you. OK, you're watching the briefing here on GBNews. Coming up in just a couple of minutes, we'll be in Westminster for a look back at PMQs. We'll be talking about Westminster culture as an MP has been arrested on suspicion of rape. And we've got Michael Fabricant in the studio. Why would you not miss that? Join us in just a couple of minutes. But first, let's bring you up to date with the weather. And it's fair to say, we're not going to be up to date with the weather. I can tell you, though, it's pretty good outside in most places. And there are thunderstorms on the way. See you in a couple of minutes.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it, Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
Welcome back. 18 minutes past 3. Let's go to Westminster. Tom Harwood, our political correspondent, is there. Tom, good afternoon to you. Your impression of PMQs today, only one topic in time, wasn't it? The cost of living crisis. It's clear the Prime Minister didn't have an answer, frankly, but also that Keir Starmer's punches didn't quite hit the target, I felt.
Yes, this felt like a relatively muted Prime Minister's questions. Of course, Sir Keir Starmer going in on the cost of living was a smart move. He would be remiss to do anything else. This is exactly what people up and down the country care about, although there's a question as to whether or not he landed a blow. Clearly, the Labour Party have one message this week, and their message has been a windfall tax in order to tax those oil and gas firms in the North Sea and distribute some of those profits to people to help them pay their bills. However, it has to be said that there's a little bit more detail being discussed with regard to that plan. The Labour Party have laid an amendment to the Queen's speech this afternoon. It's currently being debated in the House of Commons, and it's been revealed that this windfall tax on those oil and gas companies would raise about £100 per household. Now, £100 per household doesn't sound like an awful lot when we're talking about the amount that energy bills have gone up by. Indeed, it's less than the £350 help package that Rishi Sunak announced for people to help lower income households with their energy bills throughout this part of this year. So whether or not the detail of the headline-grabbing measure matches up with its promise is debatable, but I think there were a few good lines from Sir Keir Starmer today, particularly his little jab at the Brexit Opportunities Secretary Jacob Rees-Mogg, calling him a grown-up prefect, putting post-it notes on people's desks asking them why they weren't at work. That's even got a chuckle from the Prime Minister himself. So yes, I'm not sure there were any knockout blows, but certainly a little bit of a message got across there. And that message discipline is what will really matter for the Labour Party in the next few years in the run-up to a general election. They've got to find the messages that work with the public and really stick to them. After all, it's that message discipline that has played so well for the Conservative Party in 2019 with Get Brexit Done, in 2015 talking about the long-term economic plan. Often it's these little earworms, these phrases, this message discipline that actually penetrates that message deeply towards a more apathetic population.
Yeah, indeed. And I remember vox popping or interviewing people on the street in the 2015 election campaign where lots of them were quoting back that mantra of a long-term economic plan. It does clearly work. Let's finally talk, though, about these allegations against an MP. Lots we can't report for legal reasons, clearly, but it is a reminder, isn't it? Yet another reminder of many saying that the culture at Westminster is simply not working.
Yes, it feels like we're in the second wave of Pestminster now. People may remember back in 2016-17 there were a wave of allegations against a number of MPs, some of which were borne out to be quite horrifically true, and indeed a whole raft of new systems and processes put in place in the Palace of Westminster to help deal with complaints, new grievance schemes, independent standards, commissioners, all of that infrastructure set up so that a wave of Pestminster would not be able to reach the same level as it did last time. Well, it doesn't look like that infrastructure has really bedded in the way that was hoped. Now, a number of, albeit mostly historical, allegations coming forward, all hitting the last few months and indeed weeks in this Parliament. It seems like there is a moment now to consider how people behave in our politics, and it does seem to be that a lot of historic allegations are bubbling back up, and indeed some fresh ones. Clearly it's a time to look at our politics once more and see how much cleaner it could become.
OK, Tom, as always, thank you very much indeed for your time. Tom Horwath, our political correspondent, joining us from Westminster. Michael Fabricant, the Conservative MP for Lichfield, is with me in the studio. Something has to give at Westminster, doesn't it? I mean, it's not sustainable to have, not just once or twice, but many, many times MPs falling foul of the rules.
No, of course, you're absolutely right, and it's disgusting what the current MP, and we don't know his name, and the Speaker warned us, incidentally, that we're not to speculate either in the chamber about who he or she, I think they said it was a male, didn't they, in his 50s, who it should be and who it was against. And as Tom just said just now, of course, this was a historic event, not that that makes it any less important, but this was some years ago. It's so difficult to know. The Speaker is trying really hard to try and create a new ethos. I mean, Bercow at one point, John Bercow, you can tell I didn't like him, tried to close all our bars down, but that didn't make any difference. It just meant people brought alcohol in, rather like they were doing at number 10 Downing Street in the days of Blair, let alone the days of Boris Johnson. But yes, it's not sustainable. But what the solution is, I don't know. This seems to happen in other parliaments too.
Do you regret sending that tweet? I think we can show you put a tweet out this morning saying that I'm expecting a strong turnout of Conservative MPs at Prime Minister's questions today, not only to demonstrate their support for Boris, but also to prove that they're not the one told by the Chief Whip to stay at home. I'll be there, with that emoji. Many people felt you were kind of making light of very serious.
Yeah, I think a lot of people did. I think also a lot of people chose to take offence. I mean, as I said just now, I mean, the events are disgusting, and how can anyone make light of rape or sexual assault or any other similar event? But what I was making light of was that there'd been a huge amount of speculation over the last 24 hours about who this person might be. One well-known blog, which Tom Harwood is particularly familiar with, has named a person, but we don't know if that's correct.
But in hindsight, looking back at it...
Oh, with hindsight, yeah, I shouldn't have done it. But you know what? One of the things I like to do when I do my tweets is mix in serious politics with a little bit of humour. Now,
but this is not the subject to make humour about.
Well, the humour was not about the offence. The humour was who was, you know, the person being guilty. But yeah, with hindsight, you're right. And I subsequently, after a couple of hours, deleted the tweet. So, you know, we have to move on.
Indeed. Well, let's move on to PMQs today. I mean, Keir Starmer is right, maybe not necessarily the windfall tax, that's up for others to decide, but he's right in the sense that the Prime Minister doesn't have an answer to this, that the government is all over the place on whether a windfall tax on energy companies is a good idea or a bad idea.
Yeah, I don't know whether the windfall tax is the point. I think what is the point? I mean, I visited my local food bank in Lichfield. They kindly invited me and had a very constructive meeting with them, actually, very businesslike, with some practical suggestions about how I can help. And what is very clear, and I've made this point today in a tweet, actually, so, you know, I've done other tweets as well, is that Rishi Sunak has been in business, just like I was in business, and cash flow is everything. Now, normally we would wait for a benefits uprating, you know, till the autumn. But with it being inflation at 9.1% now, we just can't afford to do that. People don't have the cash flow to pay for their bills, you know. So we do need things to move fast. Now, the Times newspaper this morning was speculating that there is going to be a rapid announcement. And if there is, I welcome it. But it's got to be sooner rather than later.
Well, indeed, the Prime Minister suggested during the Queen's speech debate last week it was going to be within days.
Well, the Treasury grinds exceedingly slow. It's not just Rishi Sunak.
But on this windfall tax, I mean, what I'm trying to get at is it is less whether you think it's the solution or not. It's more that the government hasn't made its mind up clearly about it.
Yeah.
That's not great in the sense that, as you say, action needs to be taken pretty quickly.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, every dealing I've ever had with the Treasury about everything. So a friend of mine is the mayor of the West Midlands. And there are certain applications that the West Midlands...
Former head of John Lewis.
Former head of John Lewis, and I always remember a former Chancellor of the Exchequer, Philip Hammond, saying to me, if other Secretaries of State were as businesslike as Andy Street, I'd be giving them all the money that they wanted. But the Treasury does grind exceedingly slow, and I actually wonder at times whether it is because Jacob Rees-Mogg is right, and half of them are working from home and feeding their cat. And now I'll probably get even more people on Twitter telling me off.
I'm sure those hard-working civil servants would disagree. But just finally on this windfall tax, you know, it's enormously popular in the public, with the public. It's been done before by Conservative governments, including Margaret Thatcher. It clearly would alleviate the pain, particularly for those at the bottom. Why not do it?
Well, Boris Johnson, you know, privately, I'm not even sure it was that private. If it was private, hard luck, because I'm now going to tell you. Boris Johnson doesn't take a firm view on this. I mean, he's open. At the end of the day, it is actually a Treasury decision. But he recognises Margaret Thatcher did this. I think even John Major, I may be wrong. No, David Cameron.
David Cameron did,
yes, certainly. So it's not something that's against Conservative principle. Clearly, you don't want to make it so high that it deters oil companies from developing new fields. On the other hand, if it's so little, which is what apparently the Labour Party are proposing, it will hardly raise any money at all. And so it's got to be a balance that if we are going to do it, that it actually makes a difference. And I'll just pick up, if I may, on one other thing.
Just very quickly.
Very quickly. So, you know, Labour were a few weeks ago saying, oh, we should cut 5% VAT off fuel. Again, it would have made very, very little difference. It's catchy, but meaningless.
Well, as another large chain says, Tesco, every little helps. But we'll see. Michael Fabricant, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's go to Westminster again, talk to Claire Purcell, Conservative advisor who joined us down the line. Claire, thank you very much indeed for joining us. We were just talking to Michael there, weren't we, about Westminster as it's been branded. Tom suggesting earlier that we seem to be in the second wave of the kind of Me Too movement hitting Parliament and hitting people's trust in politics.
Well, that's right, and I'm really pleased to see that people are coming forward, because if there has been bad behaviour, it absolutely needs to be called out, especially when you're looking at MPs and people with power. And I think that's where the problem actually lies. It's with the power that these people hold.
You know, we know that people in the past have been accused of abusing that power, but what can change fundamentally here? Many people would say Parliament is a reflection of all of us in society, and there's always going to be bad apples, whatever workplace you look at.
And I do think that's right, and I do think that in every walk of life you will come across people whose behaviour is not what you would expect, it's not appropriate, and it doesn't just live in Westminster, in other businesses as well. But it's what we do about it, and unfortunately we've seen a slew of complaints being made against sitting members of Parliament, and no real plan as to how we're going to protect the people that are working there. So I think that is kind of more important than any other conversation. I'm not sure it's about bars. I think it is about power and also teaching people how to be employers. A lot of people that come into Parliament for the first time have never had to employ staff before. So I think we need a bit more training on that point.
Or maybe the solution is that parliamentary researchers are kind of employed directly by the parliamentary authorities.
You see, I disagree with that, and I've been sort of quite outspoken previously that I think if you start employing them by the House, then you will lose access to people who are perhaps sitting councillors, which happens across the House. It's not just to Conservative, but Labour and Lib Dems. You will also stop any of that political ambition coming forward. And you do run the risk, is if there is a problem in one office, if they are centrally recruited by the House, does that mean that you would then be able to be moved around to a different office away from the person you're working for currently? I'm not sure it's the answer to any solution, and what I don't want to see is a knee-jerk reaction to bring in some kind of regulation that just isn't going to work.
OK, Claire Purcell, as always, thank you very much indeed for joining us there from Westminster. Thank you very much indeed, Claire. By the way, do get in touch at gbviews@gbnews.uk, or indeed tweet me at GBNews, whether it's about Westminster culture, that windfall tax, or what you heard at PMQs today. We'll get to some of those a little later on the programme. Coming up from my quite croaky self between now and 4 o'clock, we'll be talking about the Scottish Conservatives opposing that windfall tax, and we've got an interview with Conor Burns on Brexit. But first, just after 3:30, here's the latest headlines again with Mosie.
Good afternoon, it's 3:33. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date today on GB News. Labour repeated its call for a windfall tax on energy companies to help with the rising cost of living on the day the inflation rate hit a 40-year high. The Consumer Price Index hit 9% in the 12 months to April. Speaking at Prime Minister's questions, Boris Johnson promised to look at all measures available to help struggling families. Sir Keir Starmer accused the government of inaction. Boris Johnson says he was shocked to learn that a Conservative MP had been arrested, having been accused of rape and sexual assault offences. The politician, who can't be named for legal reasons, has been released on bail pending further investigations and has been asked to stay away from Parliament. The Labour Party says he should have the whip removed. More than 260 small boats have crossed the English Channel into UK waters so far this year. It takes the total number of people who've been pulled from small boats to 8,700 so far this year. That's more than double the number who crossed at the same time this time last year. Spanish police have arrested 5 Eintracht Frankfurt fans following clashes in Seville city centre ahead of the Europa League final against Scotland's Rangers. Footage shows the men wearing balaclavas and throwing flares in the direction of outdoor bars where Rangers fans were gathered. Spanish authorities have deployed thousands of officers to police the game across the city. Kick-off is at 7 tonight. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Shortly, we'll be back to Darren and the briefing.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound is 1.239 to the dollar, the pound is 1.79 to the euro, and the price of gold currently stands at £1,463.04 per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle, and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Very welcome back to the briefing here on GB News. It is 23 minutes to 4 o'clock on this Wednesday afternoon. We're on TV, online and on your DAB digital radio. Thank you very much indeed for tuning in. GB Views at gbnews.uk. We're going to get to some of those a little later on, but let's return to the cost of living crisis and this idea of a windfall tax on large energy companies like Shell and BP. Some Conservative MPs, such as Robert Halfon, the chair of the Education Select Committee, have come out in favour of it. But the Scottish Conservatives have rejected the idea flat out. It signals a blocking point for the Westminster government introducing any such tax. And joining me to discuss this from Edinburgh is the Scottish Conservative MSP, Douglas Lumsden. Douglas, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Why are you against this?
Well, as someone who represents the northeast of Scotland, a windfall tax would be a disaster for many jobs in Aberdeen and the northeast. You know, the energy firms already pay more tax than other companies, so they are already paying more. And you know, this could stifle investment, and those firms that are actually playing their part in the energy transition just now. So you know, we need them, and we shouldn't be. Inflicting more tax on these businesses at this time.
You say that in many regards this is going to stifle investment, but isn't the point that lots of these profits weren't foreseen? So the investment money is already there. I think this was the boss of BP was trying to suggest. They're just making money because of, frankly, the war in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the boss on BP, I've got the quotes in front of me, he's actually changed his mind, but it seems that Bernard Looney has said the windfall tax would challenge investment in homegrown energy. Deirdre Mickey from Offshore Energies has said the view of the industry is clear. A windfall tax will divert investment, which perversely has the potential to drive up energy bills in the long term. So I don't think we should have any knee-jerk reaction and impose more taxes onto these firms that we need going forward that can play a huge part in the energy transition that we all agree that must happen.
In saying this, isn't this kind of NIMBYism, if you like? I know you're obviously representing your constituents in the best possible way, but in many regards that might be good for them, but against the interests of the rest of the country.
I think we heard from your earlier guest, Michael, that this I think has been quoted at maybe £100 per year. It might have an impact on households, but the Chancellor has already helped households out by over £350 per year. So we've got to look at the long term, and it's we need these businesses, we need that security in terms of energy and the long term. And the last thing we should be doing just now is driving that investment away and killing jobs that we need going forward.
What's your solution then? Because clearly people do need help. I mean, Keir Starmer today was pointing out at PMQs that there is a whole range of people, including some Conservatives, who feel that this is a good idea. But whether you think it's a good idea or not, help is needed. What would your solution be if it's not the windfall tax?
Yeah, and we've seen the Chancellor has said that more will be done, and what I would like to see is more targeted investment for those from lower income households, and I think that's what's needed. And there has been the Exchequer has probably taken in more money from things like VAT on energy, for example, that they were probably not expecting. So I'd like to see some of that money targeted in a way to help those on lower incomes.
OK, Douglas, thank you very much indeed. Douglas Lumsden there joining us from Scotland. Thank you for joining us. OK, let's move on to Northern Ireland, the protocol, and a big week there with the introduction, or the possible introduction a bit later, of legislation to amend the protocol unilaterally to help the government claims businesses in Northern Ireland. It's prompted a strong rebuke from the European Union, who says that there will be consequences if the UK unilaterally takes action. Well, our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, has met the Prime Minister's Special Envoy on the protocol, that's Conor Burns, the Conservative MP and Minister of State for Northern Ireland. And this is his interview.
Conor Burns, you are a minister in the Northern Ireland office. You're also now the Prime Minister's special representative to the United States on the Northern Ireland Protocol. Has the government admitted that when it signed up to this deal back in 2019, it got it wrong?
No, I think the government is being informed by the lived experience of 18 months of protocol actually implemented on the ground. We signed up to it in theory to protect the European single market. We were leaving the European Union. It was part of the mechanism to create the new movement of goods within the island of Ireland, where you have one part of the UK that has left the EU on the island and one country, the Republic of Ireland, that remains in the EU. And I think what we're saying to the EU is, look, we signed it. It had provisions within it under Article 13 to change bits of it or even to replace it in its entirety. It had Article 16 provision to unilaterally, for either side, to change or suspend bits of it if they felt it was disrupting trade or having societal impact. And I think what we're now saying to the EU is, look, 18 months on, we can see how there are companies in GB who've stopped supplying to Northern Ireland, and we need to find a way where we can recognise that a lot of the goods that come into Northern Ireland stay in Northern Ireland. They never go near the European single market, the Republic of Ireland, and let's just have a way of treating those goods differently.
Article 13.8 and Article 16 have been repeatedly cited by your colleagues over the last few weeks, indeed over the last 16 months as these talks have been going on with the European Union. Is it fair to say that potentially, when the United Kingdom negotiated this deal, the United Kingdom government anticipated a moment like this, anticipated that changes may need to be made?
Well, it's correct to say that we didn't know what the actual situation would be on the ground as the new arrangements evolved. And we are now sort of relying on those things in the protocol, which pointed the way potentially to change them. And despite, by the way, what was said today by the Foreign Secretary in the statement, we are very, very clear, she said it herself, we still want a negotiated solution to this. What we are pointing to is the solutions that we have tabled with the EU, a trusted trader scheme, strong criminal penalties for anyone who breached the trusted trader scheme, just to treat the goods differently from those going into Northern Ireland and staying there and those going on into the Republic of Ireland, into the single market. We now have 18 months of lived experience to inform our approach to this, and we think that there are very practical solutions that would rely heavily on data sharing in real time with the European Union enforcement authorities that could make this work.
It's fair to say the EU have not been the most cooperative over these past 16 months of negotiations. I was speaking to your colleague Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Cabinet Minister for Brexit Opportunities last week. He told me he thinks the EU is trying to punish the UK, and that's why it's being uncooperative in these discussions. Do you share that view?
I can see why Jacob feels that. I can see why Jacob said that. I think in my role as a Northern Ireland Office Minister, I need to focus much more on the detail of how we fix this for everyone in Northern Ireland, how we dial down the politics, get it down to the technicalities of the solutions to allow goods to move freely within our own country. Save, of course, for animal stuff that have always been checked between islands, regardless of territorial jurisdictions, and crucially, unlock the challenge of getting devolved government back.
Ultimately, peace was arrived at in Northern Ireland through a series of difficult compromises. Some would say some political fudges. Is it the case that really when we're going to solve the Northern Ireland Protocol issue, what is required here is a lot more give and potentially a little bit of a fudge?
What is required is an understanding of what's at risk. The devolved institutions are at risk if we can't resolve the protocol. It requires compromise, it requires understanding, and it requires a political determination to find the space in which to fix this.
And yet within the EU we're not seeing that political determination as things stand. In fact, the immediate response from the European Union to the statement that Liz Truss gave to Parliament was that they would potentially carry out repercussions upon the UK. They didn't use the words trade war, but they came very close to it. Are we inching towards a trade war with Europe?
The most important thing for us is fixing this, and fixing it so that we can get revived, devolved government in Northern Ireland. This is more important to get this right for our United Kingdom and for communities in Northern Ireland than almost any other foreign policy or economic objective, and that is our determination. We hope that the EU will re-engage with us in a spirit of compromise and create the necessary space to allow us to find a way through that. But we will legislate in the interests of our own country if that's what it comes to.
Is that a threat?
No, it's just a reality. We cannot stand by as the government of the United Kingdom whilst this is going on in Northern Ireland and there isn't a local government in Northern Ireland delivering for our citizens in the 6 counties.
Could you give me an estimation? What is the likelihood of the EU going along with the UK in these negotiations versus needing to use this legislative route? How likely is it that the EU will cooperate here?
Well, none of us know the answer to that, but the whole history of our engagement with the EU, the negotiations since we had the vote to leave the European Union back in 2016, are lots of things that we were initially told were impossible actually coming to pass. And I just hope that the declaration by the government of our intention to legislate if we can't reach an agreed compromise with the EU will trigger everybody having a serious look at this again and reaching solutions that work. Work for us, work for the EU, work for the Irish Republic, but crucially, work for communities in Northern Ireland.
Now, last week you gained a new title, that of the Prime Minister's Special Envoy to the United States on the protocol. Clearly the US takes a big interest in peace in Northern Ireland. They see themselves as a guarantor of the Belfast Agreement. Why is it that you achieved that new title last week?
I think the Prime Minister just wanted some serious engagement in the US. The US are heavily emotionally invested in the process that led to the institutions that sprang from Belfast Good Friday. There's a great affection for Ireland, for the United Kingdom in America, and I think the Prime Minister wanted me to go and to talk to our American friends and allies and help them see the full context of where we are, and hopefully give them an additional perspective on the challenges and why we may have to take the action we may have to take.
Do you think the Americans get it? The UK government says again and again that it wants to take action to protect the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, whereas much commentary, and particularly commentary on the EU side of things, seems to suggest that the protocol is supporting the Good Friday Agreement, whereas the unionist community in Northern Ireland and the British government say precisely the opposite.
Well, the protocol as it's currently being implemented and interpreted is the cause of the unionist groupings not wanting to go back into power sharing. Power sharing are the direct product of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. So it is the protocol that is now imperiling the institutions.
Do the Americans understand that?
I think the audience in the United States is incredibly receptive to hearing more about what's actually going on in Northern Ireland, understanding the societal challenges, understanding the trade frictions, understanding that products are disappearing off shelves in Northern Ireland that have been available for decades, and understanding in greater detail the practical technical solutions that we have tabled to the EU that meet their objectives, meet the objectives of the Irish, meet our objectives and deliver for Northern Ireland and would restore power sharing in Northern Ireland.
If this all collapses, if power sharing is not restored, if the EU levels trade repercussions upon the United Kingdom, if this all falls apart, what does that say about the Prime Minister's Brexit negotiation? Has Brexit failed?
Brexit has not failed. We've got a technical problem which is informed now by 18 months of data in Northern Ireland. We've got to fix this. If it fails, it shows that we are not able to engage pragmatically with our closest neighbour and ally, the European Union. And I would hope that what's been seen in Ukraine and the aftermath of the tragic events there is that Britain is a reliable ally, Britain is a friend, Britain is wedded to shared values, and we surely must be able to find a landing ground to sort this out in all our interests.
Connor Burns, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's turn to football, because tonight Rangers are going to play Eintracht Frankfurt in the Europa League final. It's their biggest match since 28, is that right? 2008, in the UEFA Cup final. Should they lift the trophy, they will become the first team to eliminate 3 clubs from a single nation in one season. David Donaldson has more.
Giovanni Van Bronckhorst fine-tuning his squad for the biggest match of their lives. And the Rangers managers revealed that star striker Kemar Roofe has returned from a knee injury and is fit to play.
Kemar is available. He trained for the first time with us yesterday. He had individual training before that, and he will be training also tonight. So he will be in the squad for tomorrow. If I want to use him, he's ready. It's a boost for us. I mean, he's he got injured a couple of weeks ago. He had was in a good spell. Very important for the team. And I'm happy that he's back, because he was working hard to be ready for the Leipzig game. He didn't make it, so we just extended it for him, the final. So he's there.
At least 100,000 Rangers fans are expected in Seville for the final against Frankfurt. Many have taken numerous flights and trains going via London, Madrid, Faro and Malaga. Mark Ward lost his daughter Gabrielle to cancer 5 weeks ago and was given a ticket by his friend.
I'd just like to say another good friend of mine, Darren Gibb, who can't be at the game unfortunately, has kindly given me his ticket. He's obviously knew Gabrielle as well, so it's fantastic.
That's some gesture.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a very good friend, so very much appreciated, and gives me a little bit of respite. Let my hair down for a few days, and hopefully we can bring it home for Gabrielle.
Flight to Heathrow, then Malaga, then bus up to Seville tomorrow, and bus back after the game, hopefully.
And in terms of a ticket, do you have one?
I have a ticket, yes. So I'm one of the fortunate few.
In terms of a ticket, have you got them?
I do. I don't.
There's a bit of jealousy in the family.
Part-timer.
He's taking that.
I don't have a season ticket, so yeah. But I've got one, and I'm not ashamed to show it off. It's the luck of the draw, innit? It is. The luck of the draw. It'll be a good time regardless with the fan zones and that.
Rangers fans who've made the journey to Spain have been basking in temperatures of around 35 degrees. And they're hoping the Ibrox club can add to the European Cup Winners' Cup win in 1972.
I think we've got a better chance than we did in 2008. I think this team, I thought in 2008 we scraped past a lot of teams, but I think nowadays we've definitely got enough in our locker to beat teams like Frankfurt, and we've beat Leipzig and Dortmund along the way, so I think we've definitely got it in us to do it this time.
I'm expecting Rangers to win. I'm hoping we win, but it's got to be a tough ask. We're playing a good team, you know what I mean? They deserve to be in the final as well, so it's whoever wants it on the day, I think, and hopefully we do enough to get it.
The Rangers fans have found any way they can to make it to the final in Seville, and should their team beat Eintracht Frankfurt, they'll fly into Glasgow, holding the Europa League trophy aloft. David Donaldson, GB News.
I think so. Fair to say it's going to be a pretty lively night in Seville tonight and maybe well into tomorrow. OK, almost the end of the programme. Delighted to say that. In a couple of minutes' time, we've got a titan of broadcasting.
Oh, yeah.
Colin Brazier, 4 to 6. What's happening? A titan.
Brilliant.
I think it's fair. It's not fair. What's happening? What's on your programme?
Well, some of that. I think he said it was 35 degrees. I didn't think it was quite that hot. But,
I mean, that is hot.
Low 30s. We're trying to get a piper on.
Oh, wow.
The show to pipe us off with Scotland the Brave. It's a really big deal. 100,000 fans, hook or by crook, trying to get to Seville. One guy's come from Sydney. Others have taken 4 connecting flights to end up there. 16 charter flights have gone from Glasgow Airport.
Wow.
Umpteen coaches. We were talking, one of our producers yesterday, talking to somebody on the coach. The loo stopped working at Newcastle. Can you imagine?
I mean, I'd love to, and they sometimes do measure this, just how many pints they think is going to be consumed in the next 24 hours.
I mean, you don't want to be a party pooper, do you? And COVID, first chance to get out there, sunshine, big day, big match for an historic club. On the other, equally, they've got to think about the public order. Where do you put them? A lot of the bars have closed in Seville, apparently. There's a big stadium that's opened in the north of the city, 60,000 fans expected there. You know, they have to think about how they're dealing with such big numbers.
And you've got Christine Hamilton.
She's going to be with me all day. Looking forward to that. I'd be interested to know what she's got to say about things like foreign aid. That's our big story today, Darren. Liz Truss today seems to be offering us a reset on foreign aid. The Red Wall Tories think it's ripe to be cut further. Be interested to know what she thinks.
Colin, as always, we'll be tuning in. Thank you very much indeed. He's on air in just a couple of minutes. I'm off air. Hopefully I'll have my voice back by tomorrow afternoon. I'll be back on at 3. Up next, though, it's the Met Office with the weather. And it's quite warm here as well. I'll see you soon.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. It's been a fine day for most of us, but showers and thunderstorms are lurking nearby, and overnight there is the risk of intense rain in places. A couple of things going on overnight. Weather front is approaching from the west. That will bring some rain in to northern and western parts of the country, but ahead of it, a plume of very warm air and humidity arriving from the south will extend showers into southwest England, Wales during the evening, and then some intense thunderstorms heading into the south coast and the southeast overnight. Now, with those showers and thunderstorms, we're likely to see frequent flashes of lightning, hail and gusty winds. With the rain in the north and west, also we'll see some heavy downpours at times. But all of this is out of the way by the end of the night. Clear spells follow, with temperatures holding up in the double figures in most spots. 1 or 2 showers in the far southeast first thing, they clear away. Further showers arriving into western Scotland and Northern Ireland through the day. But otherwise, away from any showers, sunny spells, quite widely, I think, by the afternoon across much of the country. Not quite as warm as it has been, but still temperatures into the high teens and low 20s for the vast majority. 20 degrees in Glasgow, 23 for London. Now, through Thursday evening, further showers will affect northern and western Scotland and Northern Ireland, and the showery activity towards the northwest will eventually make inroads across many other parts of the country by Friday. There's also the threat during Friday that we'll see some showers or thunderstorms emerge from the southeast. But as we start off Friday, temperatures mostly 11 to 13 degrees. A lot of cloud cover, I think, and the potential for some rain across southern parts and central parts of the UK during the morning, and that threat of thunderstorms close to the southeast by lunchtime. But Friday's a showery day. Saturday looks more settled for most.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to Brazier. Some fast-paced news from 4 until 6 for you in the next hour. The Foreign Secretary Liz Truss has been facing questions from MPs today on her plans to change where UK foreign aid is spent. You pay for it, where does it go? The proposals will see the government scrap the £13 million it gives to China every year for research and innovation. I'll be joined by the Conservative MP Henry